I've somewhat chuckled at people panicking over not having any bread for the snowstorm, so I'm going to show you in a few seconds on how you can make your own bread. Here's what you need: flour, a 3-cup measuring cup, salt, a tablespoon measure, yeast. I recommend a 6-quart tub. This is called a Danish dough whisk. I like measuring my flour or weighing it, a dough scraper, and that's about it. Here's what you do next. You're going to add 32.5 ounces or 6.5 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon salt, 1 tablespoon yeast. Mix it all in this bowl. 32.5 ounces of flour, 1 tablespoon of yeast, 1 tablespoon of salt or more if you like it more salty. My preference is to go in that order to make sure I didn't forget to put salt in, since it looks so similar to the flour, and then I just mix it all up before I put in the water. Next you need to add water. I do 3.5 cups, and I have filtered water, so I heat it up in a microwave for about 1 minute and 55 seconds. Concerning the water, you want it to be slightly warm to your touch, and I do a little more than 3 cups just in case I need a little extra, and I'll show you what the consistency should look like in just a second. It's going to be hard to do with one hand, but you just mix the water in with the dough. These dough whisks make it much simpler, much easier than with a spoon. If you have a mixer you want to use, that's fine, but I find it's a lot faster to just use this rather than use a mixer and clean up the mixer. Anyway, I'll be back in a minute. You can see I didn't use all the water, but the consistency is right where I want it. It doesn't stick too much to the whisk, a little bit firm. The dough should look something like this when you're done. No dry flour in the bottom. Now we're going to cap it and let it sit for 2 hours or so. This dough will rise to at least twice its current height, probably about 2 hours or so. You want to leave the lid slightly loose to let any gases escape. You don't want to create that kind of problem. Once it's done rising, I put it in the fridge for a couple of hours, and this is a different container, but then it's going to look like this. You pull it out and you're going to form it into a loaf of bread, which is going to look like this. You let it sit out for about 40-45 minutes while you let the oven preheat. What I do is I preheat my oven to as high as it'll go, and I have a baking stone, which I would recommend. If you don't have a baking stone, a cast iron skillet works well, but you don't have to preheat the oven quite as long. One key element I forgot is you want to have a pan, a metal pan in the bottom of your oven that you want to heat up the entire time, because you're going to put water in there. To save a little on cost, I buy the 2-pound bags of yeast from either Sam's or Costco, and I get a small jar, and I keep the small jar in the fridge and the big bag in the freezer. If you all been wondering what I do with these apples, nothing. They're just on the table. If you like sesame seeds, what I do is wet the top of the bread, the loaf, and then just pour them on there. I don't do this while I'm filming, but you get the idea. Then cut a few slices across the top, whatever your preference is. You're going to put it on the pizza peel, which is covered in whole wheat flour so it doesn't stick to the pizza peel. Alright, so you're just going to lift this up. You may want to cover your fingers with some flour. You're going to set it right here on the pizza peel, which I seem to like using that word. Next, we're going to put it in the oven. Slide it in, like so. Then you're going to take the water and put it in the pan on the bottom. By the way, that water was heated. Turn your oven down to 450 degrees and set your timer for 35 minutes. That's 35 minutes. That means it's done. Let's take a look. And there you have it. Easy to make bread without the panic of rushing to the store in the snow. One last note, have a cooling rack. Let the bread sit there, if you can stand it, until it's nice and cool. And the apples again are for nothing.